Hey, what's up, everybody? Good morning. It's Thursday morning live. Up and at 'em today. How's your week going? How's your day starting out, actually? One of the things I always talk about, right, is intentions. We just had the multifamily summit last week, and man, what a great event. I had 15 speakers on talking about multifamily, but I had a bunch of ancillaries on too. So we talked about self directed IRAs, 1031, I had a tax planner on. So we talked about all of those things that go into real estate investing, multifamily investing, and how to really finish the year strong. Where are we at? About 60 days left in the year. So how do we finish the year strong and start 2024 off on the right foot? Without hesitation. I think too many people right now in the marketplace are just hesitating on things, and it's not a good place to be. I love Warren Buffett's quote about, when everybody's running in fear, run with energy towards what they're running from. And I think right now is a time, it's a buying time in the marketplace. There's great deals out there. There's good opportunity. And, here's what I always tell people too. If you're concerned about interest rates, look for places that you can be where interest rates would be lower. Or if you can't find that, even if you buy something today, you're going to be able to refinance and get those rates down. But just be smart about those acquisitions. Hey, so if you're new to the show this morning, welcome. Glad that you're here. We're here every Thursday morning. Bring a live guest, somebody to talk about something to fill your mind, your space, give you something to think about throughout the day, how to increase your profitability, how to increase your financial net worth, generational wealth. And this morning, we're going to talk a lot about generational wealth. Here's what I want to ask you, though. Please do me a favor. If you are on YouTube, smash the subscribe button this morning. Follow us. We're always bringing out great content for you. If you are on one of the other social media platforms, please like us, love us, help add to our reach out there so that we can help more people. And if you are on Facebook and you like Facebook, join our community, Multifamily Unplugged, where we are always bringing good tips, good ideas, new topics, and people for you to help grow your business. All right, this morning, my guest, good friend, longtime friend. Actually, his dad and I are even longer time friends, which is kind of awesome. Bo Muzikowski. Bo is a CFP with Northwestern Mutual in downtown Chicago. Let's bring him in and chat a little bit. Bo, what's up,
everybody?
brother?
I'm doing well, Mike. Good to see you.
Good to be seen, man. I know we've been talking about this for a while. So
Sure.
you got a baby coming, don't you?
Yeah. So we're 6 weeks out from my first baby girl. Everything's healthy, going according to plan, and yeah, she should be here just after Thanksgiving, and yeah, it will be nice to spend time with her during the holidays.
Congratulations,
And not be worried about
man.
work and things of that nature.
Awesome for you guys, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, hey, listen, I'm not even in Chicago this morning. I'm on the West Coast. What
Awesome.
is the weather like there? Because I'm coming home tomorrow.
It's interesting. We got a little hot streak. It was 75 on Tuesday.
Damn.
60s and rainy today, and then it's back in the 40s next week.
Love that. Typical Chicago fall,
it.
going right into winter, man. Sleet, hail, a little bit of rain.
Yeah.
That's Chicago. So
I mean, I grew up here my whole life, so it's just par for the course,
I know, right? I always say that there's no place like the city of Chicago in the summertime.
Absolutely.
Right?
So going back, I was in high school. I was a lifeguard at the lake.
Okay.
For those of listeners who aren't in Chicago, we have our mini oceans, the Great Lakes in the Midwest, and the beach scene in Chicago is actually a thing. You get tens of thousands of people at the 12 different beaches up across the lakefront, and you got a 20-mile bike path. And it was the best job you could have as a teenager because it's $4 over minimum wage, and you get paid to work out and hang at the beach. And occasionally you got to yell at somebody.
Yeah. And you get to save girls all the time too. So
yeah, or hey, you take a college kid, we're in high school, you get to confiscate the college kid's beer and give it to a girl later. It was fun back in the day.
That's crazy. Hey, I just learned something. So I always love this because I get to learn something, but I didn't know there were 12 beaches.
Yep.
I knew there were a handful of beaches, but I didn't know actually 12. That's kind of cool.
Some might say 11 or 13 because you could consider Calumet part of Indiana almost, or a couple kind of bridge the border of Evanston. But yeah, it's roughly 12.
Sure.
Yep.
That's awesome. Hey, so listen, let's kick this thing off. One thing I always ask my guests, and Bo, I keep saying I'm going to write a book one of these days. I'm going to take all of these words that people say and write a book on it. But the one question I always ask is, in one word, what best describes you personally and professionally?
I guess this kind of connects to the weather conversation we were just having. I'd say spontaneous.
Spontaneous.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the weather's spontaneous for sure.
In Chicago, but I guess I grew up in a big family. I'm one of 8. My parents did a lot of inner city ministry in Chicago, so we were homeschooled. So you never knew growing up if we would have some homeless guys living in our basement that week, or that my dad decided to bring in, or he was going to take a bunch of kids in the neighborhood that he coached in baseball to Michigan and we're tagging along, or we're getting up at 6 a.m. in the morning to run a 5K on the lakefront, or like, and then that's carried over to my career. Changed majors a couple times in college, changed fraternities a couple times in college. And I went into this career at Northwestern Mutual, which is a great opportunity, but there's no base salary. And coming from an Ivy League school, everyone goes into these 6-figure jobs, and I kind of went off the beaten path. And here I am 10 years later. It's worked out for me, but I love going with the flow.
That's awesome. Hey, I love that. 8 kids. Do you remember everybody's name?
Mostly, yes.
Do you want here? Let's do it this way.
But I keep in touch with everyone pretty well.
Let's do it this way. Do you want to remember everybody's name?
Yes, I will say that I've, not to knock my siblings, but I'm kind of the one that always with Switzerland got along with everybody.
Yeah.
For better or worse.
Yeah. That's awesome. Good for you. So you went to an Ivy League school. Where'd you go?
So I went to Hope Academy first. My parents started inner city Christian school in Chicago.
Yeah. Talk about how that happened.
Yeah. So
that's a great story.
When my mom was pregnant with me, my parents moved to Chicago, and my dad had recently turned his life around from a crazy 20s party scene in New York in the 80s, and started a baseball team in Cabrini Green when he moved to Chicago, was at Northwestern Mutual, and it grew in just 2 years to 300 plus kids. By the time 1996 came around, it was the biggest inner city little league in the country. And he started a high school in 2005 for the kids in the little league who come from rough background, 90% of which had come from rough backgrounds. You only get so much time for 2 months in the summer, 2 hours, a couple days a week, to change kids' lives. Whereas in a school, you got them for 40, 50 hours a week and can really have a bigger impact. So that was his vision. Started this school. The school is unique, and we can get into this later. It's funded partially through real estate and private donations. And so I was one of the guinea pigs in the second year there, worked out, and I went to Columbia to run track. And I'm a distance runner, and did that and graduated 2014.
Yeah, awesome. And I know you're still running. They just had the marathon a couple of weeks ago. Did you run that this year?
I did it last year, and this year I ran 8 miles with a friend.
Okay.
Yeah.
The last 8 miles, or
the middle is where it comes to downtown and through the West Loop. It's the most scenic, and kind of give them the push when they're starting to get tired, and then when you let them go, they're close enough to the finish line
that's awesome.
to get over the hump.
I always loved the marathon because all the different neighborhoods. But I actually went out in front of church this year, and at mile 13, which is Racine and Adams, where
I ran right by there. The guy
yeah,
broke the world record too. I don't know if you saw
who
it.
he
Kelvin
did?
Kiptum, he's only 23. He ran 2 hours and some change, 4:36 per mile. And
Wow.
it's interesting. Most runners peak in their 20s, but when you get into half marathon and marathon, guys peak in their mid to late 30s. So
Mm,
the previous world record holder is 36, 37. The guy before him was in his late 30s. So to see a guy at 23 running the marathon this fast, who knows where these records go in the next couple of years.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you think all the way back to when they broke the 4-minute mile, holy cow.
Oh yeah. Now
Yeah.
they almost broke the world record in the mile a couple weeks ago too.
Yeah.
3:43. Guys
Oh,
are
no
flying.
kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
That's
yeah,
it.
the most guys will run the mile or 5K because it's the flashier events in their 20s, and then start to shift up in
Yeah.
distance as their fast twitch starts to go away. And it's cool to see the young guys just jumping into the marathon right away.
Yeah. Hey, you know what's cool about so I got to the marathon and I got off the L at Morgan and
Sure.
walked up Morgan to Adams.
Mm-hmm.
And just as I got there, the lead runners were going past.
Yep.
And to watch those lead runners, the elite runners in the world, so fast at such a clip is it's amazing. And it's funny because in the beginning there's only, here goes 4 people, 6
Mm-hmm.
people, 8 people, running by, and then all of a sudden the crowd starts to grow, and it goes from a half a dozen people passing you to
Yep.
hundreds and then thousands of people passing you. It's
Hey, going and watching the marathon, it's great community, great camaraderie. It
yeah.
almost gives you a little more faith in this crazy world that we live in. Like,
Yeah,
hey,
it.
you get people around you doing something hard. People around them come to support, whether you're the Olympian up front or the person finishing in 7 or 8 hours. Like, there's tens of thousands of people just cheering for you, and that
Yeah,
you've never met, will never see again. That really care about you for that second. And
yeah.
I wish that would carry over a little bit more.
Yeah, and I would just tell people, I'd say, if you ever need some encouragement or uplift, right, to get lift, to
Yeah.
figure out that you could go do something different, go watch a marathon. And I
Absolutely.
watched the first one I watched, I was like, damn, I got to run one of these. And you think, how do you run 26 miles? But if you follow a training program, and Bo, this is like anything else, right? In your
Yeah.
job, in baseball, in track, you follow a training program and you succeed. And so it's you get there if you put your mind to it and you're intentional about that stuff.
100%. I help coach the track team at Hope Academy, and like, let's say you're not a runner at all, you're not in great shape. You go watch the marathon. What you need to do is take action, and you need to sign up for a 5K, 3-mile race immediately today.
Yeah, for sure.
That's in a month or two, not a year out. That's in a month or
Right.
two, and you got to complete that 5K, then do a second one, then do a 10K, and then a half marathon, and then a marathon. And you, in 1 to 2 years time, you could be a half decent marathon runner from a
Yeah.
guy or gal that maybe was 50, 100 pounds overweight,
Yeah. Yeah.
let alone
And
what it can do for your psyche.
yeah. And who cares about, losing the weight but it's about what it does for your mind.
Absolutely.
Because when you start and you can only get as far as the mailbox
Mm-hmm.
or the end of the driveway walking, but then you're all of a sudden, before you know it, 5 months down the road, you're running a 20 and you
Yeah.
go, holy crap, look at that. So yeah, it's a big deal. Hey, so listen, what do you do for, what's your job? What do you do for a living these days?
So, yeah, like you mentioned, I'm a CFP, certified financial planner at Northwestern Mutual. That just means I'm well-rounded in comprehensive financial planning, which means different things to different people. For a 22-year-old, it might be setting up a savings account and figuring out how to pay off your loans or other debts. For someone who's 60 and has a 8-figure real estate portfolio or runs a business. It's setting up your trusts and estate planning for your kids and grandkids so they don't have to pay as much taxes when you're not around anymore. And the bulk of what I do is for, I like to call the emerging wealth demographic, sharp professionals, sharp families in their 30s starting to hit growth mode in their careers and figuring out what's relevant to them to cross their T's and dot their I's, be it wealth management, auditing your benefits at work and adding on to those through additional insurance, investments, retirement planning, education planning. If saving for your kids' college is important to you, how can we save money on taxes doing so? And then eventually that estate planning as you grow and hit the success and start to spend your money down. So, and we do all of that through the lens of how can we minimize the drag of taxes and the IRS along the way.
Yeah. So you said a lot there, right? And I think
Sure.
a lot of times people, they get nervous. Financial planners, I don't want. So how do you educate people from the beginning of the whole process about, is it as simple as just putting a little bit of money every month away, or where do you want somebody who maybe has never done any savings in the past to start?
Yeah. So the baseline of financial planning, I'll use a real estate analogy because this is the audience today. If we're going to build someone a financial house, you want to have a strong baseline first. And the base is simple, 4 parts for most people. First, you always want to have 3 to 6 months savings in the bank. So it starts with getting a budget. Hey, how much does it cost to be Mike on a monthly basis? And I bet 90% of people can't answer that question right away. So let's say you're a young kid in Chicago, right? A couple years out of school, your income is $5,000 a month. We go through it, and if you don't spend too much on stupid things, which young people tend to do, it costs $3,500 a month to be you. That gives a $1,500 buffer, right? 3,500, 3 to 6 months of that is roughly 10 to 20 grand. So I will tell that young person, get to no credit card debt and $10,000 in the bank. If you have credit card debt, people won't like to hear this. You have to go minimalist. The right thing for me to say as a financial advisor is go minimalist, eat ramen noodles until you have no debt and $10,000 in the bank. Then you can start to talk. Once you have 10, 20 grand in the bank, we make sure to that foundation, you have good health insurance. And if you have like an HSA account available to work, you should be taking advantage of that. Third thing is life insurance planning. Most young people don't need a ton of life insurance, if any. You're younger, it's cheaper. If you're proactive, we'll educate you on it. And then the fourth piece is income continuation planning. So depending on the line of work you're in, if you're at a large corporation or if you're self-employed, you may have some disability benefits through work. If you do not, we'll set that up for you. And if you're a little further along in life, the fifth area of that foundation would be setting up a will or a trust.
So is your client base mostly young people, or are you trying to get people who are just starting out, or are you trying?
I would say I actually met my wife 7 years ago. I got referred to her for business. She was a young investment banker. We were both 26. We grabbed coffee a couple times. She almost set up some plans, but she got into business school. So we didn't follow up. She went to business school. I saw her a few years later at a wedding, and we reconnected. Business and pleasure worked out on all fronts. But I'd say 60 to 70% of my new clients now are in their first few years out of business, medical, or law school. Those
with
people,
a lot of debt, right? School loans, college debt.
Yep. But they're also easier to work with because they have clarity. They have pretty good ideas of where their careers are going to go. They're making good money and can pay off this debt typically. And they are starting to care. You get a 25-year-old, even if they're making six figures, they typically don't know what they want. They have to be really proactive to take a conversation with me seriously. And don't get me wrong, I have those clients, but you finish grad school, you're in your 30s, you're making great income. That's when you want to have a conversation with me. And then the other 40% could be some of my dad's network who's in their 60s. That's where things get complex with trust, organizing your retirement, saving you money on taxes. And then there's some young people or entrepreneurs, real estate professionals that don't have benefits, don't work for large employers. So some of what I do is setting up their benefits, the boring stuff you don't think about every day, as well as the general financial planning.
Yeah.
Yep.
So let me ask you a couple of questions. So one thing is, I'm in the real estate business, and I've always been heavy. My investments have always been heavy in real estate.
Sure.
Right? Very limited, and every time I put money in the stock market, the stock goes down. So trust me, I won't buy any Apple or Google because I don't want your stock to go down. But
sure.
Why stocks and bonds over real estate? Or do you have a preference? Is there one or the other that makes more sense for you?
I've done it all. In my 20s, me and a buddy, Brian, shout out Brian Noller, he convinced me, after I've only met him a couple times, to buy a 3-unit building on the west side of Chicago. We spent a year fixing it up. And finally, after evicting our first tenant, we finally got some good tenants in there, rented the basement. Then we bought a couple condos. And by age 26, I had my renters paying over half my bills. It was amazing. What I didn't like is that it was a second job. And investing in real estate is a little more work than clicking a couple buttons and buying and selling a stock. So that is the biggest difference. Real estate, if you do it well, can get you the best return, right? Especially if you buy a it can be as simple as, hey, 26-year-old in Chicago, save up 15 grand, get an FHA loan with a seller credit, so you're in a place for super cheap, and then rent your other room to one of your goofy friends or one of your responsible friends, whatever. And that friend pays half your mortgage. That is investing in real estate. And I typically will tell people, if I'm sitting with a 27-year-old in Chicago, it's usually, hey, we might set up some life insurance for you because you want to buy a house. Your first $50,000 is going to go to that down payment. Your next $50,000, once you have your condo, is going to go to me. Or it's going to go to a ring and a wedding if you're getting married. And then I'll get your third $50,000. But oftentimes it's a slow burn. We might set up the basic boring life insurance that's Northwestern's historical bread and butter. And it'll take 3-4 years for someone to have enough assets to put money in the stock market. But I'll never tell someone not to buy a place for themselves first. That said,
do you think somebody should buy real estate as a house to live in first, or as an investment property first?
To accumulate the most wealth in investment property.
Okay.
But people have their families. They want to set up a great life. They want to live the American dream. If my wife, we're in a condo now, great deal. I would love to buy a 6-unit building, right, in theory, but she wants to buy a single family house, whether it's the city or the suburbs, that has 4 bedrooms and that we can live in for 20 years. And because she never wants to worry about moving again, especially because we have kids. So it depends where you're at. For anyone who's young and single, probably the investment property. If you're married with kids, you start to think a little bit differently. So you have to listen to someone's goals.
So one of the things you said is when you own that piece of real estate, there's a lot of work that you have to do yourself. You have to manage it and things like that. But there is an alternative to that, which is passive real estate investing, where
Educate me, Mike.
Okay, so on passive real estate investing, someone else, like what I do, okay?
Sure.
I go buy large apartment complexes, and we partner with the individual investor and share in the profit. So most individual investors in a passive offering will see 70% of the profits. So
I like that.
Yeah. And, returns could be, and most of the time you'll see returns projected somewhere from mid-teens to upper teens, with receiving a, single digit cash on cash preferred return along the way. So what I like to see, and I think you do this in what you do too, you do cash flow, long-term wealth,
Mm-hmm.
and tax planning. And
Yep.
that's really what I try to do on the passive side also. But the tax planning piece is, if you can help somebody offset their their income and put more cash in their pocket on an annual basis
Mm-hmm.
and give them bigger long-term wealth, it helps their personal capital stack.
Yeah, I love the real estate and private investing in general. My wife's in private equity. They buy and sell private companies, kind of like Shark Tank, but the firms are slightly more established than the ones in the show. And her firm now buys business services companies like smaller IT firms, advertising firms, etc. They grow them and exit out in 5 to 7 years, similar to how I would imagine your business model is structured. The
Yep.
downside is, compared to the stock market, your money's tied up. You don't have that much access to it. So if you have the cash flow and decent enough salary and income to part with some money for a set amount of years for a higher return, absolutely go for it. But
Well,
you
here,
have to build the habit of saving first and give yourself the opportunity to invest in different vehicles, be it with Mike or anyone else in that space.
so it goes back to, though, if you're planning for long-term wealth, why would you need liquid money anyhow? So, you set up things where, I believe in a whole life insurance policy or a universal life insurance policy.
Mm-hmm.
You could pull money out of that, which you've saved in, and you have this vehicle that's beneficial for people, and then they could invest in real estate
Yeah.
through that.
Yeah. So
And
good point. Where we've started pivoting in the last 3-4 years is allowing our clients to lever their assets at Northwestern Mutual for other things. For example,
alternative investments.
or even if your kid needs braces, right, and you need $5,000 for that, right, you want to be able to leverage your life insurance policy or your stock portfolio without actually having to sell any of it. So we partnered with a couple of banks. So say our clients have $100,000 in an investment account. Maybe they have 30, 40 grand of cash in their life insurance policy. That's 140 grand of assets. What a bank will probably do, because the stock market's volatile, is give you a line of credit for on 140 grand, close to 100 grand. So you have 100 grand, to use a real estate analogy, HELOC at a low interest rate, because Northwestern Mutual's life insurance is a AAA rated debt or collateral. And then you can take 100 grand and invest it with Mike for a couple of years. Maybe pay your interest of a couple % every year. Mike cashes you out. You pay everything back. And that way you never had to sell stocks, time the market. And if history repeats itself in 5 to 7 years, the stock market will almost be double what you got it for.
So that's a really interesting model. So, if you are to invest money through a self-directed IRA, all the money that's earned, so if there's a preferred return coming along the way, all that money has to go back in the IRA. Would it be the same thing with the life insurance? So if somebody pulled, call it 100,000 out of their life insurance policy, invested it into a passive real estate investment, and there was a preferred return paid of $7,000 a year, 7%. Does that money have to go back into the life insurance, or can that money go in their pocket?
Yeah, you could go in your pocket. You could invest it somewhere else. You could spend it on
Okay,
vacation. Who knows? But yeah,
interesting. So,
my situation, I'll give you a personal example. I got engaged end of 2020. Bought the ring, bought a car, bought a condo, in the span of 3 months. That was I don't know, $70,000. At age 28, that was most of my life savings. Now I have a wedding to pay for, a fancy, expensive wedding. So I borrowed money out of my life insurance policy to pay for the wedding. My wedding was in December. Come January, we got some wedding gifts. I got a bonus. I paid back half of that. And then over the next 3-4 months, I paid back the rest of my life insurance plan, which I still fund my premium every year. And that's growing more efficiently than a savings account if it's structured correctly. There's so many variables you can use with that. And that saved my ass a couple times. Now, next year, here we are 3 years later. My cash and my life insurance policies over double. We'll leverage that in 2024 to buy our forever home, whether it's in the suburbs or the city. And we could cash out almost 6 figures because I've been saving consistently $7-8 grand a year into that policy since I was 22.
Yeah.
So now I don't have to keep money in a checking account or a savings account, which up until 6 months ago wasn't ever getting you any returns. And everything can be invested in the stock market, or this cash in my life insurance policy serves as my safe asset to borrow from. If the stock market's at all-time highs like it was in 2021, sure, I'm selling stocks at a high, or my ETFs or index funds at a high to live my life. But in the last 10 years, in the last 5 years, I'm a financial advisor. You're a pretty smart guy. I have no idea where the stock market's going to go.
Yeah, right. Who's got a crystal ball? Mine's broke.
There's 2 wars going on, Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Palestine. Not to get into details there, but that shakes things up. You never know what China-American relations are going to do. We don't know who's going to be president in 12 months' time. I have no idea if the stock market is going to be higher or lower. I do know if history repeats itself, 10 to 15 years, the stock market is going to be much higher than it is today. Because we've survived World War II. We've survived 2008. We survived the Depression in the 30s and the inflation in the 70s and 80s, et cetera. So we'll probably, in the long run, unless the world ends, get through it. But I can't tell you what's going to happen in a year or two. So I want to be able to leverage these assets without ever having to sell at a low and participate in the recession.
It's awesome.
Yep.
How about the tax piece? So how do you help people? Like I can help people on my side through depreciation when they can take advantage of it. How do you help people for tax planning purposes? Hey, I'd like to have more cash in my pocket along the way throughout the year. Where does that come from? How do I find that?
So we want people to be saving for retirement, right? If you're in a W-2 type of job, you're never going to be an entrepreneur. You're going to typically work for a corporation. And let's do a case study. Say you have a married couple who are both in decent income roles, and they make $150,000 each, or $300,000 in total. How can those W-2 individuals who don't have access to depreciation save money on taxes? So they both can do their 401ks at work, and they're allowed to put in $22,500 a year, 45 grand. And let's assume this couple has no kids. 45 grand. They can also do an HSA or health savings account, $7,750. That's $52,750 that they can save, and all of that's deductible. So instead of paying taxes on $300, you're paying taxes on $250.
Okay.
That couple is going to get a $15,000 tax return at the end of the year. Plus their standard deduction and some other things. We won't include that. So that's where we can save you money on taxes today. The problem is if you have $1 million, $2 million in your 401k in your 60s, and you're drawing out of that, it's taxable. So $1 million after taxes, you're going to see about $700,000 of that. Because I'm assuming taxes are going to go up in the next couple of decades. So we also tell people, how do we save money on taxes tomorrow? Tax-free assets like the HSA, like your Roth 401k or Roth IRA, or like cash values in the life insurance, all of those are tax-free in retirement. And you want to balance out saving on taxes today versus saving on taxes later. I rambled a bit, but I hope that answers.
No, that's good, because, when I'm thinking, here's the thought I had, is that this is what the wealthy do, right? And this is how you create wealth. But you can't start by being wealthy. You have to start by, with the goal and the intention of wanting to become wealthy or create generational wealth and have more cash flow and more asset value. So good stuff. Bo, a couple quick questions before we get off. And I'm going to tell you what, I'm looking at the clock going, man, this is probably the longest Thursday morning I've ever done. But
I'm flattered.
But it gets interesting. So I want people to really think some of this through. Hey, best restaurant in Chicago, Bo?
To take friends from out of town, I like the Riverwalk. There's RPM Seafood. There's Pizza Portofino. There's Gibson's Italia Steakhouse. And then you got a bunch of smaller ones along the way. I couldn't give you one.
I'm a Tefano's guy, Bo.
Tefano's. Okay. There's so many. I'm not a fancy Michelin star guy that you got a bunch of 2-bite things and you pay $600 for it. But there's so many good Italian restaurants. And I really like if you're going to splurge, the steakhouses on the river with the views, you can't really beat them.
Yeah. There's some really good stuff here. How about best tourist attraction in the city? Can't say the Riverwalk.
I love the beaches, or I'd say Wrigley Field.
Yeah, you are a Cubs fan, aren't you? Go Sox.
I like the Sox, but Wrigley Field does take the cake.
Yeah, you know what? That old historic thing. Yeah, the old historic. Even when they rehabbed it, they kept the history there. Which is kind of
excellent
cool.
job.
For sure. Hey, Bo, thanks for being here. How do people get a hold of you?
My email is on the bottom. You could always reach out to Mike. He can give you my information. And then I'm on Instagram at Bo Muzikowski.
Yeah. And you should follow him on Instagram. Good stuff on a little bit of weight training and running and partying.
Yeah, exactly. Try to stay well-rounded. But yeah, my final thoughts to people would be Warren Buffett said the habit of saving beats the wit of investing. If you can get to the point where you're debt-free with bad debt, credit cards, don't buy a car until after you've bought real estate. Start saving a couple $100 a month into a retirement account to guarantee some safety in your 60s, and then take the difference and start to invest it in more aggressive items like real estate, that investment property, or even if you have a little bit of extra, something random like cryptocurrency, so that you're diversified. As long as you have the building blocks in place, it'll give you more at-bats to swing for the fences.
Hey, I appreciate you. I appreciate you being on this morning. And listen, one thing I like to do with this show on Thursdays, if you know any other men, women in the city, entrepreneurs, business owners, anybody, even Ike, right?
Yeah.
Come on, talk about Chicago Hope. If you know
anybody else. He has a lot to say about education. And if you want to get a little political about education policies, like he can go all day there, let alone the socioeconomic. How can people from X, Y, and Z be educated so that they can even start to talk to someone like me or you?
Yeah. So connect us though, would you? Because I'll ask him to be on too. And anybody else Bo, thanks for being here this morning. Good luck with the new baby coming. Give your wife my best. Have a great day. And everybody reach out to Bo if you're looking for some financial planning, even just some information, some knowledge. He's a wealth of knowledge. And here's one thing I know. What he does runs in the family. And if he doesn't have the answer, he'll go get it for you. So have a great day, everybody. Be intentional about what you do. We're here every Thursday. And Bo, we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Mike. Safe travels back.